looking nice. Room service, if I like, I order twice. Hibachi, got the gravy on the rice. Rolling in Mexico like a parrot.
Welcome into the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A, ladies and gentlemen, Steelers fans, whoever is tuning into this. I appreciate you all coming in. We got some new music, livening things up. It's Jeremy Betts here with you. We're going to talk a little bit about some past Pittsburgh Steelers today, but also we're going to take your questions, your comments, your thoughts, and we're going to have a darn good time tonight. And to do it with me, somebody I don't have on here too much, but a guy that you all love, a guy that I love. It's none other than BAD himself, the bad man himself, Brian Anthony Davis. What's up?
What is going on? I'm actually doing a show from Pennsylvania tonight.
Hey, let's go. Where do you typically reside? I guess I don't know that. What's your hometown?
I'm in Maryland.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
You realize Jeff Hartman and Dave Schofield and I live in the same town.
Okay, in the same town. I thought you guys lived in the same vicinity, but I didn't know same town.
Oh,
That's
no,
pretty cool.
same town.
Good
Yeah.
stuff.
So
okay. You guys hit all the hangouts together, right? I mean,
yes,
just inseparable.
I am at the beautiful Sinaquippi Scout Reservation in Fort Littleton, Pennsylvania today.
Good deal.
And where my daughter's on staff, my son's here as a camper this week. He was on staff, and I like to help out here as well. This is the best group I've ever been around, and it's so great to be here. And the internet is good now, and so no, it's finally good. It was terrible in past years, and they've upgraded, and I could do a show from here.
Well, I'm glad that you can, because you get to be on my show, and I didn't have anybody picked out for this week. It's been a busy week for me, so I was just going to go fly solo here, but Brian was good enough to jump on, and we're going to talk some Steelers football. It's
can I make a comment real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
There's somebody in the audience here.
Okay.
I'm going to bring his name up here.
Yeah,
Steelers
baby.
Nation Australia. Isn't it time that he comes back?
I think so.
To Steel Curtain Network.
100%.
Marky D, you give me a call, you give me a Slack, you give me an email. We got to make that happen.
Get the boys down under back over, right? That's what
I'm telling you. I'm putting you on the spot there, Marky D. You're my boy. I love you.
Don't leave us hanging, man.
So you get a hold of me. You get a hold of me or Schofield. We've been talking about this.
As the season gets closer, obviously we're going to be pumping out content as quickly as possible here on the Steel Curtain Network. So having Matty Peverall back would be fantastic stuff.
Wait. That's Marky D. That's
Marky D. But
I love Matty Peverall.
Yeah.
I love both those guys.
Bring them both back, right?
Those are my blokes, my fellas. So anyways, I'm glad to be here. This is your show. I'm just going to shut up and.
Yeah. Hey, look, there it is. Haha. Thanks, Bad. I'll slack you.
Yeah.
Right on.
Don't be a slacker and slack me. Just slack me.
Good stuff. Okay. So what we're going to do on this show, and I'm glad you're on, because I think that your knowledge of Steelers history is going to be great here. And we're also going to just have fun answering your questions. So if you're listening in, if you're tuning in and you have questions about Steelers, past, present, future, whatever you want to ask, we will get to those on this show. That's what it's all about. But I did want to kind of have, something to fall back to, Brian, that we could talk about here. And so I was like, well, let's look at this team, how it's constructed. And we all know some of the areas of weakness, or at least areas of concern that we've all talked about throughout the course of this offseason, and as the Steelers have been addressing things. But I just wanted to see, is there somebody, maybe a couple players from the Steelers past, that we could reach back to and say, man, if we could just add that guy to this team, it's an exercise we like to do sometimes, add this guy to this 2024 team, who could help the Steelers be an actual true Super Bowl contender in 2024? And, maybe let's leave the quarterbacks out of the conversation a little bit. Let's try to reach for some position players.
I agree with you on that.
But do you have anybody that comes to mind right off the bat for you, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I do. And it would, I've got a couple. I mean, of course, we can do this all day long, but you don't want to, if you do it, you only want to do one, right?
Yep.
You just want to bring back one guy. It's only fair to bring back one, because you can bring back 11, but you want to keep this. We're just adding one player. So if and no, we can talk about different players,
Yeah.
but if you're only adding one to the roster, the first one I'm thinking of is it's not the main need,
Okay.
but I would still bring back one of three guys, same position. I would bring back Mike Webster,
Okay.
Dawson, Marquise Pouncey, or oh my gosh, why did I Jeff Hardings? I almost
Jeff
forgot
Hardy.
his name. Or Jeff Hardings. You know, I would bring
Okay.
back the Pro Bowl center.
Okay.
That says nothing ill about Zach Frazier. Hey, you know my Zach Frazier jersey showed up just 2 days ago.
You finally got it?
I got
Awesome.
I got Zach Frazier.
Okay.
I got Peyton Wilson.
Did you get Troy Fautanu? Did you get the first
Oh,
rounder? Yeah.
He came about a month ago. And I got my Patrick Queen, I got my Fields, I got my Wilson, but I wanted some of those new guys. And
There you go.
I don't have a Roman Wilson, and I'd love to get a Roman, but I've got all these Wilson jerseys now. So
Right.
so anyways, no, I mean, I just got off track here. But that would be the first guy I'm bringing.
Okay. And just to make sure that line is as solid as possible, that's the kind of guy that makes them a Super Bowl contender, I guess.
I think it's a top 3 line in the league. Even with a rookie on the line in Fautanu. Because if you looked at a line with Fautanu, with James Daniel, well, he's on the other side. He's not on that side. But I'm sorry, Isaac Seumalo. You put let's just say it's Pouncey, okay? Because he's the most recent. So you have Pouncey in the middle. Then you go ahead and have James Daniel and then Broderick Jones. That is probably one of the best lines in the league.
I would agree. And I would think that they would be able to play power, mean boy football like they want to, right? That's kind of the identity they're trying to build here. And then, you know, and I get what you're saying too. Nothing against what Zach Frazier could be on this team, but just having the established Pro Bowl guy already there, calling the protections, being the guy who is just like the leader, the linchpin of the offensive line, makes a ton of sense, especially when you talk about how the Steelers want to play. That's a fantastic addition, absolutely, because they want to ground and pound the football in 2024. They want to be the more physical team, and you get one of those guys on the field. I don't know, Bat, if you've seen the photo of Marquise Pouncey circulating on Twitter over the course of the last couple of days, but he is a different looking dude. He's just a different man.
Wow. He's a thin man.
He is. And I mean, he still looks fit. He could probably go play wide receiver now is what he looks like. But it's
Alan
hard to believe.
Faneca, those guys, they got fit. They were really smart to get fit because they're trying to save their lives.
Yeah,
but
there you go.
But yeah, no, I'll go with one of the centers. The only other position that I'm really tinkering with is, of course, and I don't think the wide receiver position is in that bad of shape. Honestly, I don't think so. But I was trying to think of, there's so many receivers you could put in, but Dennis Pavlak says Hines Ward, and really, Hines Ward would be perfect because he doesn't have to be the superstar. Because he played with other guys. He didn't mind deferring to Plexico Burress. He didn't mind deferring to Santonio Holmes. He just did his job, and he was tough, and he was a leader. And could you imagine? I don't think he does. I don't think he needs too much influence because I think you're fine with George Pickens. But could you imagine Hines Ward with George Pickens and a Van Jefferson third or a Roman Wilson third or a guy like that? That would be gorgeous. So that's the only guys on offense that I'm going to go ahead and plug in there, plug and play. And with Russell Wilson throwing to those guys, I don't care what anybody's saying. This guy is going to do well here. It seems he really should. I think it's a perfect storm for both the Steelers and Russell Wilson, but Hines Ward would be amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
we could put George T. St. Stallworth. You know how much I'm a huge Stallworth fan. I went to his Hall of Fame induction.
Wow.
I like that. On defense, real quick, I'm not messing with any of the linebackers or any of the edge rushers.
I agree. I see a couple Debos in here, a couple people mentioning James Harrison. Jeremiah Yoder says James Harrison.
And I love him, but I think you're fine with Highsmith. I don't think you lose anything. But if you have to upgrade it, imagine opposite Joey Porter Jr., Rod Woodson.
Yeah. Man, he was on my short list as well. Absolutely. My number one guy was going to be Hines Ward. He really was. Okay, I thought adding him to this team with his reputation and play style, and like you said, the no nonsense. I'm not here to be a diva. I can share the spotlight with another receiver. He'd be a perfect fit. And I think that him in his prime, obviously he's a borderline Hall of Fame player. He's in that conversation for what he did as a wide receiver. So
he should be.
You're talking about a guy. Yeah, I agree. You're talking about a guy who would just step right in and be an awesome fit. But Rod Woodson on the back end was going to be my defensive pick for sure. But go ahead and explain what your thought process there.
Yeah. Well, Rod Woodson is I remember when he was drafted. Rod Woodson is he was everything. He was the superstar of all superstars. And it's funny, he was not the Joe Green Great Performance Award winner. Another cornerback, Delton Hall, the second round pick out of Clemson, won it in 1987. Part of the reason Rod Woodson didn't show up until October. There was the Olympic stuff and the qualifying stuff, but that's not what I'm talking about here. But Rod Woodson was just that guy. And if he would have played maybe about 4 or 5 years more in his prime, I think Bill Cowher would have finally relented and let him be a wide receiver too, because he was begging to be a wide receiver. But so Rod Woodson was just, he was on the 75th anniversary team very early in his career too. He was, I think, the youngest guy on the 75th anniversary team.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and not have a superstar on that team. Not a guy that never went to the Pro Bowl.
Okay.
If you go ahead and put this guy on this team, you're going to win the Super Bowl. And it's at the same position. And it's Joey Porter Jr.'s number sake, Uncle Ike.
Yeah. Uncle Ike.
You put Ike Taylor on that other side. Ike Taylor would be a perennial Pro Bowl player, and he would be the guy that you were talking about for potentially being in the Hall of Fame if he had a set of hands. Now, he won a Super Bowl because he had an interception in the Super Bowl.
He did. Absolutely.
He had good timing, but Uncle Ike Taylor, that guy was such a great locker room guy. To give you an idea, we interviewed him. I believe it was Jeff wasn't on the call, but it was Dave and I interviewed him, and we had him on there. And I had known that he was the only non-Rooney pallbearer for Dan. And Dan loved him so much, and he loved Dan. And there was a certain taboo word that Dan did not want used in the locker room. And I don't even have to give you the letter. It's the word. He didn't want it used, and he went to Ike. And Ike was like, no problem, Pops. I think they called him Pops or Gramps, or they called him something like that. Pops. And he was like, went to everybody and said, when this man's, and Dan said, when I'm around, I can't hear it.
Yeah.
And, Dan was a champion for all races. Dan was a champion for everybody. And Ike made sure that happened. And when Ike talked about being the only pallbearer and talking about his relationship with Dan Rooney, it was a beautiful human moment. So I would put Ike on this team at corner opposite JPJ, Peasy Jr., whatever you want to call him. And I think you would win a Super Bowl because that would be the top team in the league. Because as a cover corner, he was shut down and he was fast.
Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't be able to throw on this defense. You'd be looking at mid 2000s defense where you just couldn't throw on them. And they were the number one pass defense in football. I was looking it up, Brian. And I don't know if you dive into much of like the EPA per play or success rate statistics that are out there.
When you say EPA, it's Environmental Protection Agency. I mean, I don't know what you're talking. My gosh, I sound like an old man saying that. Good Lord.
Yeah, you do. You kind of do a little bit. It's expected points added per play. So
really, I like that. I like that.
So basically on defense, you want to have a lower number there, right? Because you want to be making it harder for an offense to earn points per play, right? So basically the Steelers, since Mike Tomlin took over in 2007, are number one in that category in EPA per play on pass defense. They do not let teams throw the football. And a lot of that stems from those 2007, 2008. And, Mike Tomlin, he said he'd take that 2010 defense, Brian, over the 2008 one, the one where they lost the Super Bowl to the Packers. He'd take that defense over.
That was a special defense.
Yeah. And so they were just, you could not throw on them until Aaron Rodgers did it in that Super Bowl. But it was just, and Ike Taylor was 100% a huge part of that. And you just can't mitigate how good a corner he was because the hands weren't there. I think he would be a fantastic addition here. And how much of who Joey Porter Jr. is already can you attribute to Ike Taylor? I think a huge bit of that. He's an important role model for this young player already.
Yeah, I think he is. And he was a role. That story I told you, he was just a role model in the entire locker room. Ike was just that guy. And I would bring him back in a heartbeat. I saw Eric Parker put out Casey Hampton. Yeah. But I love Big Snack, but I'm telling you, I really think Keanu Benton is going to be something special.
I agree.
If I added to that defensive line, I would upgrade Ogunjobi a little bit, but I like
Dennis
that.
Dennis Stephon Tuitt. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like the Stephon Tuitt thing. I like the, you can make a case for an Aaron Smith. They've never really had studs on the defensive line in the 3-4. They have. Right. Now, if you're bringing a guy back from that Steel Curtain defense, I don't care what era it is. I'm taking either Joe Green or LC Greenwood, and it's a crying shame. We talk about Hines Ward it being a crying shame that he's not in. LC Greenwood is the victim of just being on a great team and not being Joe Green.
Right. If he had played in any other era, he'd be the number one defensive lineman on the Steelers in that era.
The guy had 4 sacks in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Super
he
Bowl
was crazy.
4 sacks, and it's not widely recognized because it wasn't. It was 4 years before that was a true stat.
Mm-hmm.
But they go back and look. He was so dominant in that game. Oh my gosh, LC Greenwood was my guy. I wore number 68 in 7th grade. And I wear an LC's number, and that's the first Steeler I ever met, LC Greenwood.
There you go. I wore 36. For my first football team that I played on, midget football. Yeah, for Jerome Bettis. Hey, Jeremy Bettis. Jerome Bettis. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Was that because of the name?
Well, kind of, but also, the Steelers had just won a Super Bowl, and he was the big storyline, and so I was like, well, I'm a massive Jerome Bettis fan, and we basically have the same name. I like to tell people my parents named me after Jerome Bettis, but it's not really true. But
because Jeff Hartman likes to disregard any parents' naming of their children and give them the name he thinks they should have.
Jeremy Jerome.
You are Jerome. Yeah. I'm like, people think that's your name. It's not your name.
Not quite. It's close, but let's bring up a couple other guys, and then we'll go to break, and we'll talk about some other things here. But I wanted to bring up this one from Jeremiah Yoder. Rod Woodson, we talked about teaming up with JPJ. How good would Mel Blount and Minkah Fitzpatrick in the secondary together be?
Oh my God. It wouldn't be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know this. For any of you that are too young to understand this, you know that we talk about Hines Ward and how they made a role, the Hines Ward role.
Yep.
But my gosh, they made the Mel Blount role. And all of a sudden, offenses started putting up points. Especially the Steelers put up points too. They benefited by the Mel Blount role.
That's true.
Because that 5 yards chucking rule, my gosh, he would destroy you as soon as you released as a wide receiver. He was huge. What was he? I think he was 6'3".
Yeah. 6'4", I think it was.
He was 6'4".
Yeah.
I mean, this guy, and he was menacing, and he was bald. He chose to be bald before anybody else did it as a style. You know, that was very rare to have a bald man in the 70s to choose it, even the 80s. Now, like, everybody goes bald because they're like, oh, I've got this little bit of a bald spot here. It's gone.
It's gone.
And,
everything.
Yeah, you know, and I get it. I mean, it's hard for me to get because I'm a genetic mess, but the only genetic lottery I ever won was a full head of hair. I'm 52. There's not a bald spot here. But all I'm saying is Mel Blount, he had the look.
Yeah.
He was surly. He was a good dude. You know, Mean Joe Green was not that mean in real life. No, on the field, he was.
Yes, he was.
I mean, I saw him, tap a guy where you don't punch a guy a few times in the Family Jewels. And,
he wasn't playing around, no.
Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, he was, but they had so many intimidators on that team, which made them amazing. I mean, and Minka is an intimidator.
Oh yeah.
So
he might be the best tackler on the team. He's probably the best overall defensive player on the team, but he can only play one position at a time. So you got to let him do one thing, right? Instead of trying to make him do everything.
And you know what? Because TJ Watt, the intimidation factor, there's a fear factor with TJ Watt, but he does not. You don't look at TJ Watt and fear for your life. You fear for your quarterback. Right. You fear that your quarterback is going to get knocked out and the ball knocked loose. You fear that he's gonna get you, and you know how you fear his domination. But when you had guys like Joe Green, Jack Lambert, oh my gosh, Jack Lambert was another one. Joe Green, Jack Lambert, and then Mel Blount, 3 levels of a defense.
Yeah,
up front, middle, and out back. And then you had other intimidating guys. Glenn Edwards was an intimidator. My gosh, Glenn Edwards. Donnie Shell was not an intimidating man, but they called him the torpedo. I mean, they were just destroying people. And then somebody just put up Troy P. You were intimidated by Palomalo. But you were intimidated for different reasons, just like Watt.
Going to be.
Because you're going to get beat. But you actually feared for your safety when you thought of guys, especially like Mel Blount.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because we all know those 70s teams. We all know, the 2000 Super Bowl teams. Brian, is there anybody, and we talked Rod Woodson a little bit too already, but is there anybody kind of from that 80s, 90s era that you would kind of throw into this conversation again as well, maybe on defense?
Yeah, there is. I would go ahead and look at a guy like David Little or Brian Hinkle at linebacker.
Yeah, there you go.
They were just blue collar guys that would destroy you. I would also, I don't want to touch running back right now. I loved a guy like Ernest Jackson and Frank Pollard. I just loved those guys, but I don't think you need to mess with it. But when you go to the 80s and it just popped up, Greg Lloyd.
Yeah, there he is.
Goodness, Greg Lloyd. I wasn't hired for my disposition. And that guy was just, I mean, apologies to Alex Highsmith. But you know what? I would love to see Greg Lloyd and James Harrison in a staring contest. An intimidation contest.
Oh man.
I really
however really long that would last, pay to see that. That's pay-per-view right there.
But I will give you a guy that's underrated from the 90s. He did finally go to a Pro Bowl, and it's it's a guy named Joel Steed.
Okay.
Joel Steed was a nose tackle from Colorado when they were picking everybody from the University of Colorado. It took him a long time to get a Pro Bowl bid, but he was special. He was just a special nose tackle. But I don't think they need a nose tackle because I think Benton's going to be that good. I don't really think I think Herbig is going to be the best. I'm talking Nick is going to be the best number 3 edge rusher in the league. I mean, the best reserve edge rusher.
Yeah, I think he really could be. He could flash this year for sure.
But my gosh, I have a soft spot for the 80s, and people talk about how bad the 80s were. They still went to the playoffs 4 times. They almost went to the Super Bowl in 84. That was probably Tony Deffiu and always talk about that. That was such a special year. They were 9-7 was a special year. But the one guy excuse me, that held it all together was the late Tunch Ilkin.
Yeah.
He was
good old Tunch. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, how special Tunch was. Wolf was special too.
Yeah.
But I think they led as a tandem, but Tunch just was he was the player rep. He was everything to a young team, especially in 84. And he wasn't that old. He was only in his 5th year in 84.
Yeah.
But Tunch was your perennial all-pro back then. I don't think you need to touch the guards right now.
Right.
Of this team. But if we're talking about old players from that era that were special, Tunch was a guy.
Yeah. And if you go back and like listen to any mic'd up moments from him, just the most positive person out there on the field all the time too. Like, and he played with a mean streak. He could turn it up when he needed to, but he was an all around good guy as well. And you saw that down to the very last with him. Absolutely.
Yeah. Celebrity deaths hurt, but
yeah,
when Tunch died, a part of my fandom is never going to die, but being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and when Tunch passed away, and you knew it was eventually going to happen, you didn't know it was going to happen that quick.
Yeah.
But when that happened, oh my gosh, that was a gut punch. That felt like you lost a part of your Steeler family.
Absolutely, it really did. And we'll miss Tunch for as long as we are here on this earth. Absolutely. Daniel Red has a good question. Do either of you see a little John Stallworth in George Pickens? You got to watch Stallworth actually play the game. I got to see highlights, right? Do you have any comparison here, or are they different players? I just think that it's an interesting question because obviously tall, lanky, downfield threat. Is that where the comparison ends, or is there more to it than that?
This is tough because Daniel, and I tell you what, I'm a big fan of Daniel Red. I think Daniel Red's one of those guys that comes in the live chat all the time. And I'm a fan of a lot of you, but Daniel's one of those guys that he's so respectful and he brings that up. This is a tough one for me, Daniel, though, because I like the size comparison. The funny thing about John Stallworth was, I think John Stallworth was not the physical player. When Thomas Riley says that he's fast and smooth, I like that a little bit more. Here's the thing. Everybody knows that everyone knows that Lynn Swann was the number 1 pick and he was the flashy guy. But Lynn Swann would have not been Lynn Swann without John Stallworth. And Lynn Swann says that. You know what I mean? They were a true tandem. But John Stallworth, when Terry Bradshaw says this, and he said this in his book, I think it was Throwing Deep or something like that, the one that came out in the 90s. Terry Bradshaw said, at the beginning, my guy was Lynn Swann. Then later on, late in the 70s, it switched. Because, and it was nothing against Swanee, he said, but his connection with him and fast and smooth, my gosh, Mr. Riley, fast and smooth, that's perfect. I'm so glad you said that, Thomas. Just go back if you want to just see, and it's a Super Bowl, and I get it, But you want to see how great he was. Watch highlights from 13 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
Super Bowl 14 especially. There's 2 bombs to him. There was that Sports Illustrated bomb. There was a touchdown, but there was another one that didn't go for a touchdown. That they were pretty much the same play, but he was double covered, and he made perfect catches. And
Yeah.
I see George Pickens as a combat guy, but I think George Pickens could grow into being a John Stallworth, but he can't be there yet. Yeah, that long touchdown run. He had 4 catches for like 130 to 112 yards. 115, I think it was. 4 catches, but that long one.
The run was
like
incredible.
Right yeah. Super Bowl 13 was just as great. Watch those highlights and just sit there and just say, man,
yeah,
if I could have just come on this earth and be a Steelers fan earlier, it would have been special.
Oh yeah. I always look at him, and I still to this day, you watch him catch a football, and it's like it was like he was born for the specific purpose of catching the ball over the shoulder. Like he could not miss. It was art. And it was just fun to watch those highlights of him.
And one last thing. I don't know if it's fair to even I don't think it's even fair to compare the two. But it wasn't a comparison. So in Daniel's defense here, I'm also going to say that he's not comparing them, but I think it's I do see a lot of potential for George Pickens to be a John Stallworth. If you get that out of George Pickens, I think George Pickens is great right now. And I'm telling you, if you're a fantasy player, I'm not a fantasy. I play fantasy, but I'm not a fantasy guru like Betts and Wilbar are. And they are. I trust them. I actually listen to those guys before the draft. In fact, Jeremy will tell you, I called him last year before I drafted.
Oh yeah. How'd it work out for you? I never asked.
No, my team sucked. You screwed me. But
great. Now tune into the Draft Dynasty podcast anyway, everybody, please.
No, I'm just kidding. No, you did help me out. You helped me out great. But I did win your league, and then you didn't invite me back the next year. So I'm still mad about that.
We had to make sure that other people had a chance to win their
Yeah, I win the league and he fires me. Yeah, then next thing you know, he lost a show for a little while.
That is true.
You didn't. No, you didn't. No,
I saw the retribution coming.
But no, if you're a fantasy guy, really think about George Pickens. Because this is kind of set up for it to be back in the Antonio Brown years, where you had one guy getting 1,500 and 100+ catches, and the next guy getting 600. But still having a winning team.
Right.
And Freiermuth is gonna go absolutely nuts. Really, if he's healthy, Freiermuth is going to be your guy.
When we talk about these guys from the past and bringing them forward, I think a lot of it has to do with the nostalgia that we feel when we think about them, right? And one of the things that is completely true is that this is a completely different NFL than it has been even 10 years ago when Hines Ward was playing, right? It's just a different NFL. And I'm not saying you couldn't drop these guys into any era and they wouldn't be successful, but I mean, part of what the appeal to the John Stallworths, the Joe Greens, the Mel Blunts, it's just that they were men, right? They were just men like you and me, and they happened to play football, and it was spectacular to watch. And so having something like that, I think, could spark an incredible thing for the NFL these days as well, in my opinion.
I don't want to hijack your show, but I've got an idea. We do need to take a break. We didn't take a break yet, did we?
We did not take a break. I was gonna wrap it up here in a couple minutes too.
Let's take a break, but
okay.
We'll only do this for like 2 minutes, but I want you guys to think about this when we're on break. Let's go ahead and opposite. Who now? Who on this current Steelers team would you put on the 70s team, the 70s and 80s team to make them 6-time champs, 8-time champs, or maybe 2 in the 80s?
Yeah.
Who would you put on that team?
while you're thinking about that, we're going to go to break here. Don't go anywhere. The Steelers Sunday night Q&A. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back here on the Steelers Sunday night Q&A. We were talking about past Steelers that could make this current squad a true Super Bowl contender. But Brian had the great idea. Let's talk about some guys from this era that we would like to have seen play way back then in the 70s. I say way back then, Brian. I'm sorry about that. That's my bad. I don't mean to make you feel old on this show.
That's fine. I was a kid in the 70s. So,
there you go.
I mean, I didn't graduate until the late 80s. I was born in the 70s, okay. So I'm not. Sure. I'm not. It's not like I was born in. I'm not that old, and I'm not. You're only as old as you feel.
There you go.
But
we got some already popping up in here.
Teams, 70s and 80s teams.
Daniel Red's got a couple. JPJ and Najee. I like the Najee one. I like the Najee one because I think that his style is that of a bygone era, basically. I think he could perform in that regard. Obviously, you wouldn't have needed him because you got Franco, but I think his style would have fit very well. And yeah, you're going to lose me if you try to ask me who the second corner on the 1975 Steelers team was, 1978 Steelers team was. But JPJ, I mean, he's a physical player. That's his brand. I like it.
JT Thomas. You had JT Thomas. You had Ron Johnson. Ron Johnson was the number 1 pick in 78. JT Thomas was the number 2 pick the number 1 pick in 73. And he was really good for that team. They had another good one. If that team lacked anything on defense, that defense was so good. They needed another. Now they played a 4-3. You did not have to touch. Oh my gosh, you did not have to touch that defensive line. They needed another linebacker because once Andy Russell retired, it was a 3-4. It was the 2 jacks. It was Ham and Lambert.
Yeah,
and you needed Lauren Tays ended up being good, but he was more of a reserve. Then you had guys like Zach Valentine, who was a number 2 pick. I'm putting TJ Watt on that team.
Yeah.
And I'm and it's devastation. It's absolutely devastation.
It would be
incredible. My gosh, could you they win 6 or 7.
I mean, how do you block all that? You can't do it. You can't block all that coming at you. Nobody could block it anyway, but add TJ Watt in that mix. That's ridiculous.
And I don't know whether was it Thomas Riley. I don't know who said it that Jack Ham could have played in any era. Yeah. And you know how partial I am to Jack Ham because Jack Ham's from Johnstown, PA. Daniel Red said it. I'm sorry. Jack Ham was, oh my gosh. That team was insane.
Mm-hmm.
That defense, I never saw anything like it. But the offense wasn't bad either.
Yeah.
The 80s could have used the 80s could have used a quarterback. So I will tell you this. You can go ahead, even though he hasn't played a down for the Pittsburgh Steelers yet. You can go ahead and put Russell Wilson on that 80s team and you win 2 or 3. Because they were good.
That would have been
the defense was still good. The defense was still good. And I'll tell you this. If they would have kept Jim Smith, and here's a guy, I would have taken Jim Smith, their 3rd receiver, and I'd put them on this team right now as their number 1 or number 2 receiver. And Jim Smith, they would be one of the best teams in the league. Tony and I used to talk about Jim Smith all the time too. He was so special. But he was their 3rd receiver. But he made things happen all the time. When he went to the USFL, he had over 1,900 yards in the USFL. Wow. He left the Steelers. If he would have stayed with the Pittsburgh Steelers in '84, and you had Lewis Lips, Jim Smith, and John Stallworth, you could have probably won a title there too, despite not having Marino.
I want to give Isaac Seumalo some love because he's a physical interior offensive lineman. I think he could have played in the 70s, 80s era, pushing
Yeah,
guys
you
around.
know what? Isaac would have been. Oh my gosh, Isaac would have been really good.
Yeah.
That line, that was a very good line, but it didn't have a lot of Pro Bowlers, with the exception of Mike Webster. To hear that they've never had a left tackle Pro Bowler, or they've never drafted a left tackle Pro Bowler,
Wow.
that's insane to me.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
John,
Yeah.
John Kolb was so good. They had 4 Super Bowls out of John Kolb, who was the exact birthday, day, month, and year to my dad.
Oh, wow.
So I could tell
That's
you,
crazy.
August 30th, 1947, John Kolb was born. 4-year superstar. And that guy, number 55, that guy was one of my guys. And I didn't know that back then. I just loved John Kolb, and I just found this out like maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. I found out probably as he was going down a step and leaving the Steelers, that Willie Parker and I share the same birthday, not year, but same birthday, 11/11. So those us November boys, we got to stick together.
Guess who I share a birthday with?
Who's that?
Ozzy Osbourne.
No way. Okay.
Not the same year. No, he's a lot older than me.
Yeah. But hey, there you go.
Ozzy and I. It's bad and Ozzy.
You know, you can go online and you can look up famous people with your birthday. I need to do that again and see what the updated number is there.
and I have 2 women that have the same birthday as me that I have a crush on. Julianne Moore.
Okay.
And Olympic gold medal figure skater from 1988, Katarina Witt. I always had crushes on them. I didn't know we had the same birthday, and I found that out later.
That's pretty neat.
And Andy Williams, if you like Christmas music, Andy Williams has the same birthday as me too.
Right on. Here, just a couple more here. We got how would Troy Minka pair of safeties? Could you imagine, from Vinny Agukun? We talked about Troy a little bit. It would have been amazing. What could you do? What could you do? And then Omar Khan. Hey, Omar, thanks for joining in on the chat, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, Omar, thank you. Thank you. You can DM me, Omar. I mean,
yes, please, let's do it. Hines Ward would make us a Super Bowl contender. We talked about Hines Ward a little bit too. We definitely think he could be a huge asset to this team. This is fun from George T. I share a birthday with Chuck Noll. That's a good birthday share there.
Yeah,
that's
Chuck Noll was. And I say this all the time, and I do not. Oh my gosh, Thomas Riley, late WWF Ultimate Warrior. Jim Hellwig is his name, by the way.
Okay.
Jim Hellwig, the Ultimate
Jim
Warrior.
Hellwig. I never got into wrestling. I never got into wrestling.
I'm still into wrestling.
There you go.
It's great stuff. Chuck Noll, and I say this all the time, and people get mad at me when I say this, but it's 100% true. I will go ahead and back this up every time. And when I say it, and then most people, they get mad, but when they think about it, you're like, right. I'm like, if you don't like Bill Belichick, then you wouldn't like Chuck Noll.
Yeah,
because they're the same style coach. They're the same
coach.
Same everything. And don't and say, well, Chuck Noll never cheated. Yeah, he lost draft picks.
Wow.
There was no Deflategate. There was no Spygate, but there was. People don't know this, but John Clayton basically turned them in. John Clayton was a beat writer for the Steelers, and Clayton basically, because he wrote about it, they had non-pad practices that Chuck's like, screw it, you're putting pads on and we're gonna destroy each other. He's one of those no mercy guys,
right? Yeah.
He was just a no mercy guy, and you know what? Chuck and Terry weren't buddies. They weren't, and Chuck 40 years ago, almost to the day, said Franco who in 1984, and Franco never played for him again because Franco was holding out. And he's like, he's not here. Franco who? He was that guy. He was a businessman. They Myron Cope called him the excuse me, called him the emperor, and that was great. Mel Blount, I don't think.
I was going to pull that up. Yeah.
I don't think, but I'll tell you who did sue Chuck Noll, and it was a defensive back for the Raiders, George Atkinson, because Chuck Noll called the Raiders, and he was right. He called their defensive backs Jack Tatum, who paralyzed a guy, and who was also involved in the Immaculate Reception. Called him and George Atkinson the criminal element. And they actually did try to sue Chuck Noll.
Gotcha.
And
for defamation?
Yeah, it was a defamation thing. Nothing came of it. This was late 70s. So I don't unless there was another problem with Mel and Chuck that I don't know, Thomas, I'm not telling you you're wrong. I have not heard of that. And there's things that I haven't heard. Oh my God. I got to bring this up. I got to bring something up. This is just, I love this show. The Q&A is always my favorite.
It's a fun one. It always is great. Yep.
But Vinny, you don't watch wrestling now, but I acknowledge our tribal chief, Brian. My gosh, you just made my night, Vinny, because that is the ultimate respect, calling me that I don't deserve to be called anybody's tribal chief. But that is such a sign of respect. Thank you. That's so nice.
Good stuff. This is a fantastic show. I always love interacting with the listener, and you guys all do a great job too. You give us so much to talk about. It's so much fun. We said before the show we're going to be on for 30 minutes or so. It's 45 minutes in, and we're like, we didn't even know.
We didn't get a lot of questions tonight, but we did get one. I think it was Thomas Riley that put it in, and it's a question that I cannot answer. Maybe Schofield could answer this question, but I think it was something like, and I think it was Thomas saying, what would the 70s defense cost in cap?
There it is.
This year. Yep. Okay. Bad in today's NFL salaries. What would the 70s team cost in today's money? You couldn't have that team.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because because when free agency came, having a dynasty team. Now we talk about dynasties like the Chiefs are a mini dynasty right now, but here's the difference. Look at those Patriots teams that won. Look at the Chiefs now. They're not true dynasties because there's different running backs almost each time. There's definitely different receivers. I mean, you've got the coach, you've got the quarterback, you've got the tight end.
Right. It's the same logo winning championships, but it's a bunch of different players.
Logo, but it's not the same players like that Steelers dynasty, and you could never put it together again.
Right. Yeah.
But
absolutely. And the Steelers are already spending the most money on defense. They'd have to break out even more of the paycheck or the book to try to pay those guys today.
Fantastic. Okay, I got to bring something else up here too.
Sure.
Because now we're getting into the wrestling thing. Okay. Vinny says Roman Reigns. Oh, okay. Sorry. Not Vinny, but Eric Parker said better than Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns he's not the champ right now, but I got to bring him up because he is a cousin of the Rock, kind of. The Samoan dynasties in wrestling is amazing. I know this isn't a wrestling show, but
that's all right. We talk about whatever here.
Roman Reigns' father, Sika, just passed away at age 79, and he was a part of the Wild Samoans that kind of got this started. And so rest in peace, Sika.
Yeah,
Roman. I have trouble pronouncing Alani, Aani, Anoai, something like that. I when they were pronounced it, I was watching something. I think it's Aani. But rest in peace to Sika, because some of the great wrestling you're seeing came back through those through that entire Samoan dynasty that was just absolutely awesome. And then for somebody to call me the Paul Heyman of broadcasting, I don't deserve that, because Paul Heyman is one of the greatest personalities in the history of professional wrestling. There is nobody. If I was as good as Paul Heyman on the microphone, I would be making millions. Now let's talk about let's pivot back. Thomas Riley on July 15th, Mel Blount told reporters he was suing Knoll for $5 million in compensatory damages plus $1 million in punitive damages for being included in the criminal element. I did not know that. Wow. So he actually put his own player in the criminal. I don't remember that. I need to look into that more. Thomas, thank you for sparking me. That's really interesting. I want to see that. That's awesome. That's something that I did not know, and I love learning new things like that. So that's you know who would know this stuff is a guy like Jim Wexel. Wex would definitely know this stuff. Wonder if I can get Jeff to hook me up with a call with Wex, because I got to find that out. Did I lose you? I can't hear you all of a sudden.
Audio quit. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. There you go.
My audio quit. I had to unplug my phone, so
I have to personally apologize to my good friend Jeremy Betts, who I love and adore as a brother or an uncle. I'm old, so uncle.
Whatever we are.
but I am also I'm going to go ahead and apologize to you because I hijacked your show. So
that is okay. No problem. I love it. It was a lot of fun conversation. Absolutely. I was going to ask you if you saw the Iron Claw movie.
I did. So I did. I just watched it a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
I got to be honest with you. I hated it.
Okay.
I thought it was a good movie, but very far off the truth on a lot of stuff.
Sure. A lot of
they even kept one brother out completely.
Wow. Yeah.
But here's something very interesting. My cousin, who is on the Fans First Sports Network, his name is Vinny Barry. I'm going to go ahead and give him a plug. He has on Fans First Sports Network. He does a lot of like old independent wrestlers and old wrestlers, but he is an author, and he wrote a book about Lance Von Erich, who, Lance Von Erich was not an official Von Erich. He was the imposter Von Erich. When these guys were dying, they brought in a new Von Erich. And MGF, Malcolm Jacob Friedman, who is the guy in AEW, and he's one of the best. He's like 25 years old, but he is one of the greatest. One of the he's upcoming. He's young, but he's going to be just a true great in that business. He played Lance Von Erich, and my cousin wrote Lance Von Erich's book, and he's written a couple others, but if you do like that kind of stuff, it's called Lance by Chance. I'm gonna give it a plug.
Yeah,
check out Lance by Chance. MGF played Lance in this movie, and he was hardly in it. You blink and you miss him, and you're like, but when you look at this guy, how he ended up making millions in real estate and other places, and he came out of it very, very well. But that poor family was cursed. They really were. But it's worth watching.
Sure, because I watched it and I read the story of what actually happened too, and it was very far apart, like how it actually all played out. But
the movie's
at least
good.
Got me looking, because I was like, this could not all happen to this one family. And then
it did.
Like,
it was worse
than that. It's worse than this. What is going on here?
But you got to remember, my wife hates that I do this, but I get pissed at Remember the Titans, and Remember the Titans is a great movie.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody loves Remember the Titans, but it pisses me off because Gary Bertier played in the championship game, which they won 35-0. They didn't win on a last second play. They won. You got to Disney-fy it. You've got to make it so it's fun at the theater. And I get it.
High stakes at the end,
a little bit, but he did not get into that car accident until the banquet. Afterward.
Right. It was
so now that was true. He was paralyzed. He ended up being like a champion athlete in a wheelchair.
Right. Paralympics, right?
Yeah, Paralympics. But but and they never sang coming out of the tunnel.
Sure.
They didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, no, that stuff never happened. We are the Titans, the mighty mighty. No, it didn't happen. But and you know the really bad guy that was Gary Bertier's buddy that they kicked off the team.
Right.
He didn't exist. That
No.
was just a fictional character. So
Sure.
it's stuff like that you're like, yeah. And my wife's like, will you quit ruining stuff for me? I'm like,
right.
yeah, because we were just watching one of my favorite shows, but besides Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, is one of my absolute favorites is Stranger Things. You watch Stranger Things?
I haven't watched it. No.
Oh my gosh, Bets, what are you doing? I know you have a kid, but come on. Stranger Things.
I'll get on that. I will.
So they're in season 3, and it's 1985, and this woman's getting ready, and she's playing "I Just Died" in the background. Has Cutting Crew, #1 song from 1987. "I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight," and I'm yelling at the TV, and my wife's like, will you shut up, Brian? You're ruining it for me. I'm like, that song came out in 87.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Now it's popular again.
Yeah, I mean, but it's 85, and here they have Cutting Crew on. No! that stuff drives me crazy. He did the same thing with Sunglasses at Night. But I digress. I'm sorry.
Hey, they're messing up Star Wars with the Acolyte too. You're not a Star Wars fan. That's Dave, right?
No. I have seen every Star Wars movie in the theater first run.
Oh, wow.
I was like 4 when New Hope came out.
Sure, but you saw.
But the new stuff I don't know as well. I'm trying to catch up on, but no, I was a big fan. I remember for Return of the Jedi, standing in line. We had a short Friday, early dismissal. And we went down and at noon for a 7 o'clock showing to see an opening weekend, and we stood in line.
Man.
So yeah, it's Hartman that hates Star Wars.
Yeah, Jeff.
Now he doesn't hate it, Dennis. He doesn't hate it.
Yeah.
He refuses to watch it, just like Schofield. Schofield won't watch Die Hard. Now Hartman loves Die Hard. Schofield
yeah.
The only reason these guys won't watch it because they're stubborn, because it's popular. Like, I've got a buddy, one of my best friends in the world, Brad, refuses to get a cell phone. He needs a cell phone. He won't get a cell phone because everyone has.
How do you not have a cell phone these days? That's crazy.
His wife has a cell phone, and every once in a while he uses it. But that's it.
Yeah.
But they refuse to watch it out of spite now. At this point,
there you go. Well, hey, Bad, this has been a ton of fun. Absolutely a blast. Can you plug anything you got coming up outside of this? What you got?
Yeah, I can. So let's go ahead and talk about a schedule change. And there's going to Bad Language is I haven't even told Jeff and Dave this yet, because this just happened right before we went on. Bad Language is going to go tomorrow at noon. And Here We Go, the Steelers show, will go Tuesday at 4:00 a.m. Just one time only. And the reason being is Kevin was having severe internet problems. Tried to do the show with a hotspot. It wasn't working. Mr. Wood City 1984 is the best music of your life. And 40 years ago today, because this is being recorded on June 30th, my favorite band had 1 week at #1 with their album Huey Lewis and the News Sports. Hit #1 on this day, Mr. Woodside. So I'm telling you right now that this is a special day. The #1 song was also Reflex by Duran Duran on June 30th, 1984. So 40 years ago, people know, when you ask any member of my family what's Dad's favorite year, what's your husband's favorite year, it's 1984. Not just because of Van Halen and Huey Lewis and Prince, Purple Rain. The movies were amazing too. And Karate Kid came out 40 years ago last week. Ghostbusters came out 40 years ago 3 weeks ago. Great year.
You're on top of it.
But yeah, and I just completely, squirrel, that's bad, I completely got off track there. But that's the deal with that.
Good deal. Well, always tune in to Bad Stuff. He's got some of the best stuff going on the Steel Curtain Network and Fans First Sports. If for some reason you're in here and you're a Raiders fan, you've got to check out what Bad does with the Raiders stuff. And
I'm a producer. I'm just a
okay,
producer.
you're just a producer. I thought you came on the show with oh man, what's
Hondo.
Is it Honjo?
Hondo Carpenter, who's
Hondo
one of the best in the absolute business. He is a Sports Illustrated reporter. He does all of our Raiders coverage, and that's where I learned all about Peyton Wilson, because the week of, he was talking about Peyton Wilson, if you can get this guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, or 2 weeks before it, and that's when I got on that bandwagon. Jeff always teases that I'm a Raiders fan. No, I work for I work for Hondo, but
Right.
I have grown to love as a second team. I root for the Raiders. You know, when it's a business thing, I like their young coach, AP. Antonio Pierce reminds me of, he is the type of coach that the players are, I mean, that is building a culture and a good culture like Mike Tomlin has built in Pittsburgh. So now the only stuff that I've done there is I'll do a breaking news show every once in a while if something happens. And I did draft day. Just talking about the picks like Dave Schofield does here. I stole our idea and I used it over there.
There you go.
And it worked. No, I am not leaving. I'm not a Raiders fan. Trust me. But I'm not leaving the Steelers. This is, you got to understand, I have been a Pittsburgh Steelers fan all my life, and I am living a dream doing this. This is what 8-year-old Bad, if he knew that he was doing this now, he would cry, because this is an absolute dream. But this dream can't come true without Dennis Pavelak, Gavin Anthony, all you guys, Steelers Absolutely. Nation, Jeremy, Daniel. I mean, and you're just the guys on the screen, Afton, and definitely everybody.
We appreciate each and every one of you,
Kathy.
And keep coming back to us, because we're gonna keep bringing the content. It's gonna be fun stuff like this. It's gonna be meatier stuff, more to the point, but we've got everything that you could possibly handle here at the Steel Curtain Network for your Steelers content. That's going to
listen to this guy. This guy and Will Barr, man, they're great.
I appreciate that. We have several shows. We do the Fix. We do the Draft Dynasty podcast if you're into fantasy or NFL draft. So tune into those, and then don't miss the All Bets Are Off segment on every Friday with Jeff Hartman on the Let's Ride podcast. We have a lot of fun doing that. Appreciate all you guys. We're going to head out of here. We're going to let you go. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night and have fun at work tomorrow, everybody.